They thought he was just an old man on a porch. Gray hair, slow steps, a quiet nod to anyone passing by. But what nobody knew was my grandfather wasn't just any veteran. He was the man who trained black ops units in how to fight, survive, and vanish without a trace. His silence wasn't weakness. It was patience. And that patience made him the biggest threat to Patricia Moore, the new HOA president who ran our neighborhood like it was her private kingdom. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Patricia didn't like people she couldn't control. She wore sharp suits, barked orders at meetings, and believed fear was the best way to keep the community in order. The problem? Grandpa didn't scare. She hated that. He'd get violation letters shoved under his door for things like untrimmed hedges or porch lights too dim. He didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't even attend her meetings. He just sat on the porch, sipping his tea, watching her schemes pile up like dead leaves. Patricia mistook that silence for surrender. That's when she escalated. One humid Friday afternoon, a dented SUV rolled slowly down our cul-de-sac. Two bulky men stepped out, both in mismatched tactical boots and faded cargo pants. Their vests were the kind you'd find online for $50, but in bold white letters across the chest were the words, HOA Cop. They carried clipboards and radios clipped to their belts, like kids playing dress-up. But they walked up Grandpa's driveway with the swagger of men who thought they owned the street. "Sir," the taller one barked, "we're conducting a compliance inspection. HOA Enforcement Division." I remember choking back a laugh, but Grandpa's face never moved. He set his tea down and looked at them the way he probably once looked at recruits who thought they were tough. That silence stretched, uncomfortable. The shorter one shifted, trying again. "We've got reports you're in violation of multiple community codes. Failure to comply means immediate fines. We're authorized to escalate if necessary." And that's when Grandpa finally spoke. Calm, even, deadly precise. 18 U.S. Code 912, he said. The two men blinked. "That's the federal statute for impersonating an officer of the United States," Grandpa continued, his voice as steady as stone. "It's a felony. 5 years in prison, minimum. And the way you introduced yourselves just put you both in violation." The taller man scoffed, but his eyes darted. "We're not impersonating." "Save it," Grandpa cut him off. "You approached me claiming enforcement authority. That makes it a crime, and if you think you can demand payment, let me remind you of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Section 807 makes it illegal to collect or threaten to collect any debt not owed. So unless you want federal charges stapled to your names, I suggest you explain who Patricia sent you as." The silence that followed wasn't weakness. It was the sound of two fakes realizing the old man on the porch wasn't prey. He was the predator. "Look, old man," the tall one said, folding his arms across that cheap vest. "You can quote laws all you want, but if you don't follow Patricia Moore's rules, there will be consequences." The shorter one smirked. "Real consequences." Grandpa didn't flinch. He just stared until they got uncomfortable enough to back down. They muttered something about final warnings and stomped back to their SUV, peeling out of the cul-de-sac like they'd actually accomplished something. Most people would have shrugged it off. Not him. He documented everything, every word they said, every false claim they made. He filed a written report with the HOA office the very next morning, attaching photos of the fake badges they flashed and the make and model of their SUV. Then he marched right up to Patricia Moore's house. She opened the door with her trademark smirk, dressed like she was heading into a courtroom. Grandpa laid the report in her hands, his tone clipped but polite. "These two men are impersonating law enforcement using your name," he said. "It stops now." Patricia didn't even glance at the paperwork. She folded her arms and leaned against the doorframe, her voice dripping with arrogance. "You don't make the rules here," she said flatly. "You follow them, or you find somewhere else to live." Grandpa raised an eyebrow. "So you're confirming they work for you?" Patricia smirked. "I don't confirm anything, but I will say this, you're too old to be playing lawyer. If you keep resisting, things might get harder for you. Much harder." Most men would have snapped right there, but Grandpa simply nodded, turned on his heel, and walked away. Silent again, patient again. That night, silence got tested. Around 1:30 a.m., motion lights blinked on outside the house. Grandpa, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, didn't move. He just listened. Metal clanking, a trash bin toppling over, the crunch of boots on gravel, then the splintering crack of wood. The next morning, our mailbox lay in pieces. The trash bin was crushed, kicked so hard it split down the side. Patricia's message had been delivered: obey or pay. But here's the thing she didn't know. Grandpa always prepared. Days earlier, he had mounted a small security camera under the eave of the porch, angled just right to cover the driveway and the street. The footage was crystal clear. The two fake HOA cops laughing as they swung a crowbar into the mailbox. One of them even posed in front of the camera without realizing it. Grandpa didn't rage, didn't curse. He simply saved the video to 3 separate drives and began drafting his next report, because he knew Patricia thought silence meant surrender. But this time, silence meant her downfall was already in motion. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. Grandpa didn't rush to the HOA office with his footage. He'd learned long ago that the most effective counterstrike is the one nobody sees coming. Instead, he called me. Together, we reviewed the security video frame by frame. The faces were clear, the crowbar visible, even the SUV's plates shining in the night. That was all we needed. Grandpa filed a formal complaint directly with the county sheriff's office. Alongside the video, he attached copies of the bogus fines Patricia had mailed him. $150 for failure to maintain lawn symmetry, $200 for unapproved porch chairs, and an outrageous $500 lien threat for refusal to comply with HOA directives. None of it was legal, and every citation was signed with her name. The sheriff didn't drag his feet. Impersonating law enforcement is a felony under 18 U.S. Code 9112. Property damage, even to something as small as a mailbox, is a crime under 18 U.S. Code 1705. And harassment through bogus fines falls under both state consumer protection statutes and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Grandpa had built an airtight case, piece by piece, but Patricia wasn't about to back down. 2 days later, the white SUV crept back. This time, only the same 2 fake HOA cops stepped out, crowbar in one man's hand. They weren't just sending a warning now. They were coming for Grandpa, his property, and anything they could grab. Grandpa gave me a nod and we walked toward the garage, slow and steady. The cameras were already rolling. The men forced the side door open. "Old man," one sneered, "you're going to start paying Patricia's fines, or next time it won't just be your mailbox." Grandpa's voice stayed calm, steady. "Walk away while you still can." They didn't. The one with the crowbar lunged first, swinging at Grandpa's ribs. Wrong move. Grandpa deflected, stepped inside his guard, and twisted until the man's wrist popped and the crowbar hit the floor. A controlled strike to the thigh dropped him screaming. The second thug rushed me, shoving forward. Before I could react, Grandpa cut him off. An elbow to the sternum, a sweep of the legs, and the man hit the concrete with a heavy thud. In less than 10 seconds, both were down, groaning and unable to move. The men wheezed, clutching their sides. One spat blood and asked, "Who the hell are you?" Grandpa leaned down, voice low and steady. "The man who trained your replacements. Black Ops, Class 72. You boys don't even rank." Before the shock could fade from their eyes, headlights blazed across the driveway. Deputies arrived, already on alert from Grandpa's earlier complaint. They found the 2 imposters beaten to a pulp. The evidence was undeniable. Video recordings, the bogus badges, the crowbar, and Patricia's signed citations. Officers poured out, weapons drawn. Patricia Moore herself came striding behind them, shrieking like the queen of a crumbling empire. "Arrest this man," she screamed, jabbing a finger toward Grandpa. "He assaulted my officers, my HOA officers." The deputies froze for a moment. Then the sheriff himself stepped forward, frowning as Patricia kept shrieking. I handed him the folder Grandpa had prepared, the complaint, the bogus fines, and the security footage on a drive. The sheriff scanned the papers, then looked at Patricia. "Patricia, these aren't officers. They're your hired thugs, and you just admitted it." Her face drained of color. The 2 men on the ground were cuffed immediately. Their charges? Assault with a deadly weapon, state felony max 5 years, attempted burglary, and criminal conspiracy. Each faced $10,000 fines plus restitution for damages. For Patricia Moore, impersonating law enforcement, 18 U.S. Code 9112, felony up to 3 years in federal prison. Mailbox destruction, 18 U.S. Code 1705, another felony, up to 3 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Property damage for the trash bin. The sheriff's office valued it at $1,200, which under state vandalism statutes meant treble damages, $3,600 owed to Grandpa. Fraudulent fines and lien threats, in violation of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and state consumer protection laws. The county attorney demanded $25,000 restitution be paid back to residents who had been scammed with her bogus citations. The sheriff ordered Patricia into cuffs on the spot. Her shrieks carried down the street, but nobody stepped forward to defend her. Even her so-called board members had gone silent, realizing their signatures were on illegal fines too. Within weeks, the fallout was total. Patricia was indicted on 4 federal counts and 3 state charges. The thugs took plea deals, but still walked away with felony records and tens of thousands in restitution. The HOA's insurance carrier dropped coverage entirely after the fraud came to light, leaving the association bankrupt. A civil court later dissolved the HOA, citing systemic abuse of authority and criminal activity under the guise of neighborhood governance. And Grandpa? He received every penny of restitution, plus reimbursement of legal fees. Standing on that porch again, coffee steaming in his hand, he summed it up with one line: silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just waiting for the right moment. And that's how two fake HOA cops and a power drunk president learned the hard way. You don't push around a man who once trained black ops. The thugs walked away with felony records, Patricia lost everything, and the HOA itself was dissolved. Grandpa didn't need to shout, threaten, or play politics. He let the law, the evidence, and his own quiet strength do the talking. What do you think, folks? Did Patricia and her fake cops get exactly what they deserved? Drop a comment below. I'd like to hear what you would have done if it was your case. The end.